Eleanor Ward stood frozen in the dusty street as four armed men surrounded her. The marshal said she had two choices: work off a $200 debt as an unpaid servant for 2 years, or marry the cowboy rancher who stood watching with storm-cloud eyes, a man she'd met just 6 weeks ago. A man whose 8-year-old son had forged the matrimonial letter that brought her here. But to understand how a widow from Philadelphia ended up trapped in a Wyoming town with no money, no family, and no way out, we need to go back to the moment she stepped off that train. If you enjoy stories of courage and second chances, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you were watching from. Eleanor Ward stepped off the train into humiliation. The platform at Cheyenne Station stretched before her like a stage, 40 pairs of eyes already turning, already judging. She clutched her carpet bag with hands that had scrubbed too many floors, worn gloves hiding calluses no lady should bear. 6 days of travel had left her dress wrinkled, her hair escaping its pins, her spine aching from wooden seats and the weight of desperation. The man waiting near the station house looked exactly as his letters had described. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair touched with gray at the temples. A face carved by wind and work into something that might have been handsome if it weren't so utterly devastatingly cold. His eyes met hers across 30 feet of dusty platform. No recognition flickered there. No welcome. Just stone. I never wrote those letters. His voice carried, meant to carry. Every person on that platform heard Caleb Hart declare her a liar, a fool, a woman who'd traveled 1,000 miles on false promises. The crowd went silent, waiting. Eleanor's throat closed. Her carefully rehearsed greeting died unspoken. The carpet bag suddenly weighed 100 pounds. She had $12 left. $12 between her and starvation, and this stranger with eyes like winter had just destroyed her last chance at survival. Then she saw the boy. He stood behind Caleb Hart, maybe 8 years old, dark hair sticking up in the back face white with terror. His fingers were stained with ink, fresh ink, the kind that came from writing too fast, pressing too hard, wanting something so badly that proper penmanship didn't matter. Their eyes met. His were blue, drowning blue. Eleanor knew drowning, had felt it every day for 8 months since the mine collapse that took Thomas, since the boarding house owner's brother started looking at her like property, since the last of her money ran out, and answering a matrimonial advertisement became the only door that wasn't locked. She set down her carpet bag, slowly, deliberately. Then I suppose, she said, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart, someone needs to teach your son better penmanship. The afternoon sun beat down on San Francisco like judgment. Eleanor Hart, 74 years old and dying by inches, sat in her velvet armchair and watched her granddaughter's pen fly across paper. Margaret was 16, all angles and earnestness, determined to capture every word before the cancer claimed them. Start at the beginning, grandmother. Eleanor's hands, age-spotted and trembling, folded over the photograph in her lap. A family, 4 people frozen in 1883, smiling at a future they couldn't see coming. The beginning, she said, her voice rough as old leather, was the day I discovered I'd been purchased by a lie. Margaret leaned forward. Outside, automobile horns honked. Electric streetlights flickered on against the gathering dusk. 1920, a new world. But Eleanor's mind was walking backward, through 4 decades, each step bringing her closer to that platform, that moment, that choice. They asked me once, a reporter from the Chronicle, if I regretted it, answering that advertisement, traveling west to marry a stranger. She touched the photograph. Caleb's face stared back, younger, harder, a man who hadn't yet learned how to smile. I told him regret was a luxury for people who never had to choose between starvation and scandal. But that wasn't the whole truth, was it? Eleanor's lips curved. Sharp girl. No, the whole truth is this. She settled deeper into the chair, gathering the threads of memory. This is a story about a woman who went west looking for safety and found a war instead. About a man who built walls so high he forgot there was sky above them. And about a child who committed fraud because love is sometimes more desperate than lawful. Margaret's pen scratched. Waiting. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Eleanor closed her eyes. 52 years fell away like autumn leaves. The real question you want answered is this. How does a woman survive arriving at a station to meet a husband who never sent for her? How? Margaret whispered. Let me show you. May 1878, Wyoming Territory. Eleanor had been traveling for 6 days, Philadelphia to Chicago on the Pennsylvania Railroad, her last $20 buying a ticket and nothing else. Chicago to Omaha on the Union Pacific, sleeping upright because sleeping cars cost extra. Omaha to Cheyenne on the final leg, watching civilization thin to nothing through windows filmed with dust. She'd left behind a city of smoke and stone streets that knew her name only as the teacher's daughter or poor Mrs. Ward the widow. Left behind her mother's grave and her father's disappointment in the boarding house where the owner's brother had started knocking on her door after dark. The letters had arrived through the matrimonial service like answers to prayers she'd been too proud to speak. Careful script, measured words. I am not a romantic man, but I am a decent one. I have land, a home, and a son who needs steadiness. If you are a woman of character who seeks the same, I would be honored to meet you. She'd written back the same night. Told him about Thomas, the mining engineer she'd married at 23 and buried at 26. Told him about her mother's midwifery practice, the skills she'd learned. Told him enough truth to feel honest and enough lies to feel safe. He'd confirmed. Arrangements were made. And now she stood on a platform in a town that smelled of horse and dust and possibility, facing a man who just called her a liar in front of God and everybody. The boy Noah stepped forward, small for 8, too serious, carrying something heavy in the set of his shoulders the way children did when they'd seen their mother die and their father turn to stone. Pa, wait. Caleb Hart's jaw could crack walnuts. Noah, back to the wagon. I wrote it. The words tumbled out fast, desperate. The letter, I found the matrimonial paper at the mercantile. I copied your name. I thought, his voice broke, blue eyes swimming. I thought if someone came, you'd stop being so sad. Eleanor felt the crowd's attention shift. Whispers started low and vicious. A woman near the station house, silver-haired and sharp-faced, moved forward like a general taking position. Caleb crouched, his face level with Noah's. You forged my name. Yes, sir. You invited a stranger to here under false pretenses. Yes, sir. Do you understand what you've done? His voice stayed low, controlled, but Eleanor heard the fracture underneath. A man holding himself together with wire and will. What this cost her? Noah's tears spilled over. Yes, sir. Eleanor knelt. Her dress pooled in the dust-expensive fabric, ruined, and she didn't care. The boy's face was level with hers, now all terror and hope, and the kind of loneliness that ate you from the inside. You love your father very much, she said. Not a question. Noah nodded, unable to speak. And you're scared. Another nod. She looked up at Caleb. He'd straightened, standing over them both, and the stone in his face had cracked just enough to show the man underneath. Exhausted, drowning in his own way. This doesn't concern you, ma'am. But his voice had lost its edge. It concerns me entirely. Eleanor stood, brushing dust from her skirt. Pointless gesture. Everything was already ruined, Edda. Might as well ruin it thoroughly. I'm the stranger your son asked for help. The silver-haired woman swooped in. Caleb Hart, you cannot seriously be considering letting this woman stay. It's improper. She has no chaperone, no family, no prospects, Eleanor cut in. Sharp, letting the anger show because fear would get her nowhere. No money, no future. You're correct, Mrs. Brennan, Agnes Brennan, and I am simply concerned for propriety. Propriety. Eleanor tasted the word like ash. Turned to Caleb. I understand if you want me gone. You didn't invite me. You don't owe me anything. But your son wrote to a matrimonial service because he was drowning and didn't know how else to ask for help. Caleb's throat worked. Ma'am, I know drowning, Mr. Hart. She met his eyes, held them, let him see her, really see her. Not a schemer, not a liar, just desperate. Same as Noah, same as him probably under all that stone. I've been barely keeping my head above water for 8 months. So when I say I understand your son, I mean it in my bones. Silence stretched. The crowd pressed closer, hungry for spectacle. Then Noah moved, stepped between Eleanor and the whispers, squared his small shoulders, lifted his chin. She stays. His voice was thin but certain. I wrote the letter. I asked her to come. She stays. Eleanor's throat burned. Caleb looked at his son, at Eleanor, at the crowd that wanted blood or tears or something to talk about over dinner. All right, he said finally, rough, reluctant. You can stay at the house. There's a spare room. It's small, but it's private. Mrs. Brennan made a sound like a strangled cat. Caleb, you cannot be serious. The impropriety alone. She's not staying at the hotel where every traveler and drifter can bother her. Caleb's tone went flat. Final. She'll stay with us. Noah asked her here. I'll see it through. He turned, walked toward a wagon hitched near the station house. Noah looked up at Eleanor with something like awe, then hurried after his father. Eleanor stood alone on the platform. Her carpet bag sat in the dust beside her. She'd just agreed to live in the house of a man who didn't want her in a town that already despised her because a lonely child had written a letter in secret. She picked up her bag, followed them to the wagon. Behind her, Mrs. Brennan's voice carried sharp and clear. Mark my words, this will not end well. The wagon ride stretched 5 miles through country so vast it made Eleanor's chest ache. Wyoming opened before them like God's own canvas rolling, grassland painted gold by the afternoon sun, mountains purple in the distance, sky enormous and merciless. Noah sat between them on the narrow bench, stealing glances at Eleanor when he thought she wasn't looking. She could feel his hope like heat against her side. Dangerous thing, hope. Got people killed, got them hurt, got them standing on platforms in strange towns, facing strangers who looked at them like problems to be solved. Caleb drove in silence. His hands on the reins were scarred, capable, the hands of a man who built things and fixed things and probably broke things when necessary. He smelled of leather and wood smoke and coffee so strong it probably walked itself out of the pot. His presence beside her was solid, immovable, a wall she couldn't see around. Pa. Noah's voice was small. Are you mad at me? Yes. The boy flinched. But I understand why you did it. Caleb's jaw worked. Doesn't make it right. Doesn't mean there won't be consequences, but I understand. I'm sorry. I know you are. Eleanor watched the landscape roll past and said nothing. This was between them, father and son working through damage she'd had no part in causing, yet. They crested a rise and the ranch appeared below them, small, neat, a 2-story house with a sagging porch barn larger and better maintained than the house corrals stretching in clean lines, maybe 30 head of cattle grazing 6 horses. Everything functional, everything lonely, everything missing something. Caleb pulled the wagon to a stop, climbed down without a word. Noah scrambled after him, grabbing Eleanor's bag before she could protest. I'll show you the room. She followed him into the house. It smelled of dust and coffee and the particular emptiness of a place where laughter used to live. The kitchen was clean but spare. A wood stove, a scarred table, 2 chairs. The sitting room held 2 more chairs facing a cold fireplace. Stairs that creaked. Upstairs, Noah opened a door to a small room. Bed, washstand, window overlooking the valley. Nothing else. Not even curtains. It was Ma's sewing room, Noah said quietly. Pa cleaned it out last year. Eleanor set her bag on the bed. The mattress was thin but clean. The window glass was wavy with age but unbroken. Better than the boarding house, better than the street. It's perfect. Thank you. Noah hesitated in the doorway. All that hope shining in his face, fragile as spring ice. Are you really going to stay? For a little while. Why? She turned to look at him, this small boy who'd committed fraud for love, this child who deserved better than watching her leave before they'd even talked. Because I think you were brave to write that letter, and I think you deserve better than watching me run away. His eyes filled again, but he smiled, just a little. Pa's going to be mad for a long time. I expect so. He's not mean. He's just sad. I know. Noah nodded, left, his footsteps light on the stairs. Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed, looked out the window at the endless sky. She'd left Philadelphia with nothing. Come here expecting a new life, a partnership, maybe even a kind of peace. Instead, she'd found a man made of stone and a boy made of hope. She didn't know what would come next, but she wasn't leaving yet. Dinner was beans, cornbread, and silence. Caleb cooked his movements efficient and distant setting plates on the table without looking at her. Noah sat between them, glancing nervously from one adult to the other, a child caught between hope and fear. The food was plain. Good. Eleanor had expected worse. "Thank you for the meal," she said when she finished. Caleb nodded once. "Pa's a good cook," Noah piped up. "He learned from Ma." Noah, quiet, firm. The boy fell silent. Eleanor folded her napkin. "May I help with the washing up?" "No need." "I'd like to." Caleb finally looked at her. Really looked. His eyes were gray, storm cloud gray, the kind that promised lightning. "You're a guest. Guests don't work." "I'm not a guest. I'm a woman who showed up uninvited because your son forged a letter. The least I can do is wash a plate." His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. They worked in silence. Eleanor washing Caleb, drying Noah, putting things away. It was strange and awkward and somehow almost normal. The domestic rhythm of it, the simple choreography of shared labor. When the last dish was put away, Caleb sent Noah upstairs to bed. The boy went reluctantly, looking back at Eleanor like she might disappear. Once they were alone, Caleb leaned against the counter, crossed his arms, the stance of a man preparing for battle. "You can't stay long. I know. People will talk. They already are." He studied her. That storm cloud gaze, trying to see past her skin to whatever truth lived underneath. "Why did you really come here?" Eleanor met his eyes without flinching. "Because I had nowhere else to go." "There's always somewhere else." "Not for a woman my age with no money and no family." She kept her voice level. "Facts, not feelings. I answered your letter, Noah's letter, because it was honest. Or I thought it was. I didn't come here looking for romance, Mr. Hart. I came looking for a chance." "At what?" "At a life that isn't about surviving day to day. At work, that matters. At a place where I'm needed." She paused, let the next words land clean. "Your son needed someone. That's why he wrote. Maybe you don't want to admit it, but it's true." Caleb's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or pain. "My son is my responsibility." "Yes, and he's trying to take care of you." That landed. She saw it hit. Watched him turn away, gripping the edge of the counter. His shoulders went tight, breathing controlled. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Maybe not." Eleanor said it quietly, gently. "But I know what loneliness looks like." He didn't respond, just stood there, a man carved from grief and guilt, holding himself together through sheer stubborn will. She left him there, climbed the stairs to the small room with the window that looked out over the valley. Undressed slowly, washed her face in the basin with the small bar of lavender soap she'd brought from Philadelphia, one of the few luxuries she'd allowed herself to keep. Lay down on the narrow bed. Outside, the wind moved through the grass like whispers, and in the silence of the house she heard footsteps, pacing, back and forth, until long after midnight. Morning came with a rooster's crow and the smell of coffee. Eleanor dressed quickly, pinned her hair, came downstairs to find Caleb already gone and Noah sitting at the table with a bowl of oatmeal. "Morning." The boy's smile was bright, hopeful, breakable. "Good morning." She poured coffee from the pot on the stove. Black, strong enough to strip paint. She added cream from a pitcher, watched it swirl. "Where's your father?" "Out with the horses. He's always up before the sun." Eleanor sat across from him. The kitchen was warmer now, morning light spilling through the window. "Do you go to school?" Noah shook his head. "There's no school close enough. Pa teaches me reading and numbers at night." "Do you like it?" "It's all right." He stirred his oatmeal. "I like stories better than numbers." "What kind of stories?" "Adventures, cowboys and outlaws and stuff." He looked up at her shyly. "Do you know any stories?" Eleanor smiled. "A few." They talked while he ate, about books, about Philadelphia, the buildings so tall they blocked the sun streets, so crowded you couldn't walk without bumping into strangers. About the things he wanted to see someday. Oceans, mountains, cities. He was bright, curious, hungry for a world bigger than this valley. When Caleb came back in, sleeves rolled up and hands dusty, he stopped short at the sight of them talking. "Noah, go check the chicken coop." The boy's face fell, but he obeyed, scraped back his chair, disappeared outside. Caleb poured himself coffee, leaned against the counter, watching her with those storm cloud eyes. You're good with him. He's easy to talk to. He gets attached fast. Eleanor met his gaze. I'm not trying to hurt him. I know. Caleb's voice went rough. But you will anyway, when you leave. Maybe, or maybe I'll leave him better than I found him. That's not how it works. Isn't it? She stood, set her cup in the basin. Your son wrote that letter because he's desperate for something you can't give him. I don't know what that is yet, but I know running from it won't fix it. Caleb's expression darkened. You've been here one day, and I've already seen more than you think. Then you should know this won't end well. Maybe. Eleanor said it quietly, turned to face him fully. But I'm still here. She walked outside, left him alone with his coffee and his silence. And for the first time in 3 years, Caleb Hart wondered if maybe, just maybe, he'd been wrong about something. The days fell into rhythm. Eleanor rose early, made breakfast, while Caleb worked the morning chores, sat with Noah while he practiced his letters. She mended clothes without being asked, swept floors that didn't need sweeping, kept herself busy in ways that made her presence useful rather than intrusive. Caleb said little, worked from dawn until dusk, came in for meals, retreated to silence. But he watched her when he thought she wasn't looking, careful assessing glances that told her he was waiting for something to break. On the 4th morning, Eleanor found Noah in the barn struggling to lift a saddle onto a fence rail. Here, she took one side. Together, they hoisted it up. Noah grinned. Thanks. Pa says I got to be able to do it myself, but it's heavy. It is, Eleanor agreed, but there's no shame in asking for help. Pa never asked for help. I've noticed. The boy leaned against the rail, watching her. Do you like it here? Eleanor considered the question. The land was harsh, the work endless, the silence heavy, but there was something about the valley, the way the light moved across the hills, the smell of sage and dust, the bigness of the sky. I do, she said honestly, even though Pa's so quiet, especially because of that. She brushed straw from her skirt. Quiet men usually have the most to say. They just don't know how to say it yet. Noah frowned. Pa used to talk more, before Ma died. What was she like? The boy's face softened. Pretty. She laughed a lot. She used to sing when she cooked. He kicked at the dirt. I don't remember her voice anymore. Just that she sang. Eleanor's throat tightened. I'm sorry. It's okay. But his eyes said it wasn't. She wanted to reach for him, offer comfort, but she didn't know if she had the right. So she just stood there beside him. Two people carrying losses they couldn't name. Let the silence hold them both. That afternoon, Mrs. Brennan arrived. Eleanor was hanging laundry when the woman's buggy rolled into the yard. Caleb was out checking fences. Noah was inside practicing arithmetic. Mrs. Brennan climbed down without waiting for assistance, her expression set like mortar. Miss Ward. Mrs. Brennan. Eleanor pinned a sheet to the line, kept her movements calm, unhurried. What can I do for you? You can tell me, what you're still doing here. Eleanor reached for another sheet. Mr. Hart offered me lodging. I accepted. For how long? I haven't decided. Mrs. Brennan's mouth thinned. This town has standards. A single woman living under a widower's roof without a chaperone is improper. I'm staying in a separate room. I help with the household. There's nothing improper about it. That's not how it looks. Eleanor turned to face her fully. How it looks, Mrs. Brennan, depends entirely on what people choose to see. People see a woman who came here under false pretenses, took advantage of a child's foolishness, and now refuses to leave. Is that what you see? The woman hesitated. Just a fraction. It doesn't matter what I see. It matters what the town thinks. The town, Eleanor said quietly, seems to spend an awful lot of time thinking about other people's business. This is a small community. Reputation matters. Then perhaps the community should be more concerned with kindness than reputation. Mrs. Brennan's face flushed. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know that a little boy lost his mother and did something desperate to help his father. I know that instead of compassion, he got judgment. Eleanor's voice stayed level, hard as stone. And I know that if this town cared half as much about that child as it does about gossip, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The words hung in the air. sharp, clean. Mrs. Brennan opened her mouth, closed it, turned on her heel and climbed back into her buggy. She snapped the reins harder than necessary. The horse lurched forward. Eleanor watched her go. Her hands were shaking. She turned back to the laundry and found Caleb standing near the corner of the house. He'd come back without her hearing. She had no idea how long he'd been there. "She's not wrong," he said. Eleanor picked up another sheet. "About which part?" "All of it." He walked closer, boots crunching on dry ground. "People are talking. They think you're here to trap me into marriage." "Are you worried I will?" No." He said it with certainty. "But it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what they think." "Why?" Eleanor pinned the sheet with more force than necessary. "Why does it matter so much what strangers think about your life?" "Because I have to live here. Noah has to grow up here. If they decide we're—" He stopped, searching for the word. "Indecent." "Yes." Eleanor turned to face him. "Mr. Hart, I've been called worse things than indecent. I've been called desperate, pathetic, past my prime, a burden. I came here because I had nothing to lose. If staying here costs you something, tell me now and I'll leave. But don't ask me to leave because you're afraid of gossip." Caleb stared at her, his expression unreadable. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone softer." "I was soft once," Eleanor said quietly. "It didn't serve me well." He nodded slowly, as if that made sense to him. Then he turned and walked back toward the barn without another word. That night, Noah asked Eleanor to tell him a story. They sat on the porch as the sun set, painting the sky orange and purple. Caleb was inside reviewing ranch accounts by lamplight. "What kind of story?" Eleanor asked. "A happy one." She thought for a moment, then began. "Once there was a girl who lived in a city made of stone and smoke. She had a small room in a tall building. And every day she looked out her window and wondered if there was a bigger world beyond the streets she knew." Noah leaned forward. "What did she do? She saved every penny she earned. And when she had enough, she bought a ticket on a train heading west. She didn't know where she was going or what she'd find. She just knew she couldn't stay where she was." "Was she scared?" "Terrified," Eleanor said. "But she went anyway." "What happened to her?" Eleanor smiled. "She's still finding out." Noah grinned. "That's you." "Maybe. Did you really not know Pa didn't write the letter?" "I really didn't." "Are you mad at me?" Eleanor looked at him. This small, brave boy who'd taken a chance on a stranger because he didn't know what else to do. "No, Noah, I'm not mad." "But you didn't get what you wanted." "I didn't get what I expected," she corrected. "That's not the same thing." He thought about that. "Do you think Pa will ever want you to stay?" The question was so earnest, so full of hope. It nearly broke her. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but wanting someone to stay and being ready for them to stay are two different things." "What's the difference?" "One is a feeling, the other is a choice." Noah nodded as if that made perfect sense. They sat together in the gathering dark, listening to crickets, to the distant sound of Caleb's pen scratching across paper. And Eleanor thought maybe, just maybe, she was starting to understand what she'd stumbled into. Not a marriage, not even a household. A family held together by grief and hope and the desperate need for something better. Whether it would survive her presence was another question entirely. But she wasn't leaving yet. The trouble came 5 days later. Eleanor was in town buying flour and sugar at the mercantile when she overheard two men talking near the counter. "Hart's got himself a live-in woman now." The voice carried, meant to carry. The other man laughed. "Guess he's not so particular after all." "Can't blame him. A man gets lonely." "Lonely's one thing, but moving her in without a ring, that's something else." Eleanor set the flour on the counter, turned to face them. Both men went quiet, faces flushing. "Gentlemen," she said evenly, "if you have something to say about me, I'd appreciate you saying it to my face." The first man, balding with a thick mustache, cleared his throat. "No offense meant, ma'am." But offense was given. Eleanor didn't raise her voice. Didn't need to. "I'm staying at the Hart Ranch because a child asked me to. I work for my keep. I sleep in my own room. And what happens under that roof is nobody's business but ours." "People talk," the second man muttered. People always talk, Eleanor said. It's easier than thinking. She paid for her goods, collected her parcels, walked out. Behind her, she heard the whisper to start again, louder now, meaner. When she returned to the ranch, Caleb was waiting in the yard, his face tight, posture rigid. What happened in town, she told him. He listened without interrupting, jaw working. When she finished, he turned away, stared out at the horizon. I'm sorry, Eleanor said quietly. For what? For making this harder. You didn't make anything harder. His voice was rough. They were always going to talk. I just thought. He stopped. What? I thought I could keep you separate from it, from them. You can't, Eleanor said. Not in a town this small. Caleb turned back to her, his eyes dark. Then maybe you should go. The words hit like a fist. Eleanor forced herself to stay calm. Is that what you want? It doesn't matter what I want. It's the only thing that matters. No, he shook his head. What matters is Noah. What matters is keeping him safe. Keeping him from being, he broke off, hands clenching, from being what? Ashamed. Eleanor stepped closer. Of who you me? Of all of it, his voice cracked. His mother's gone. His father's barely holding on. And now there's a strange woman living in our house because he forged a letter. What do you think that does to him? I think, Eleanor said slowly, it shows him that people can be kind even when the world isn't fair. I think it shows him that mistakes don't have to ruin everything. She paused, let the next words land clean. And I think it shows him that his father is strong enough to choose what's right instead of what's easy. Caleb stared at her, breathing uneven. You don't know what you're asking. I'm not asking for anything. She held his gaze. I'm just telling you what I see. He looked away, shoulders sagging. I can't do this. Can't do what? This, you, any of it. He gestured helplessly. I don't know how. Neither do I, Eleanor said, but I'm still here. Before he could respond, Noah came running from the barn, face pale. Pa, there's men coming. Caleb's head snapped up. How many? 3, maybe 4. Eleanor felt her stomach drop. Caleb's expression went cold, controlled. Go inside, he told her. What's happening? Just go. She didn't move. The riders appeared over the hill. 4 men on horseback, moving fast. And Eleanor knew with the certainty of a woman who'd learned to recognize predators that everything was about to change. The riders came hard dust rising in their wake like smoke signals. 4 men on horseback moving with the kind of purpose that meant trouble had finally arrived, wearing boots and spurs. Eleanor's fingers tightened on the porch railing. The wood was sun-warmed under her palms, rough grain catching on her skin. Real. Solid. Everything else felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to fall. Caleb stepped forward, put himself between the house and the approaching riders. His hand didn't go to his hip, but Eleanor noticed the gun belt hanging by the door within reach if needed. Take Noah inside, he said, voice flat, the tone of a man who'd faced violence before and survived it. This time she obeyed, caught Noah's hand and pulled him through the doorway. But she didn't go far, stayed in the threshold where she could see, could hear, could act if this went the way her gut said it would. The lead rider pulled up hard, his horse dancing sideways, foam at the bit. The man was older, silver-haired, wearing a suit too fine for ranch country. Behind him, 3 younger men, hired muscle, the kind with dead eyes and quick hands. Hart, the silver-haired man's voice carried. Zoil, we need to talk about your situation here. Caleb's voice stayed level. My situation's my own business, Tom. Tom, Mrs. Brennan's husband, Eleanor realized, the pieces clicking together. This wasn't random, this was organized. Tom Brennan dismounted. The 3 younger men stayed mounted, hands resting too casual on saddle horns, too close to where Eleanor suspected weapons lived. Not when it affects the town. Brennan gestured to the others. We've got concerns about propriety, about example. I'm not setting any example. I'm living my life. With an unmarried woman under your roof. Brennan's eyes flicked to Eleanor. Cold assessment, finding her wanting. With a guest who's doing no harm, you've already been over this. That's not how people see it. Caleb's jaw tightened. Then people need to mind their own affairs. The 4th man spoke up. lean, hard-eyed, wearing a badge pinned to his vest. I'm Marshal Coughlin. I've been asked to look into whether there's been any impropriety. Eleanor's blood went cold. Not just social pressure, legal pressure. There's been nothing improper, Caleb said evenly. Then you won't mind if I ask the lady a few questions. I mind, but I won't stop you. Coughlin turned to Eleanor. She stepped onto the porch, kept her spine straight, her chin up, every eye on her weighing, judging, waiting for her to break. Ma'am, are you here of your own free will? I am. And you're staying in Mr. Hart's home without any formal arrangement. The phrasing was careful, legal. Eleanor felt the trap in it. I'm staying in a guest room. I help with household work, that's all. She's lying, Brennan said flatly. Covering for him. Caleb took a step forward. Careful, Tom. It's true, isn't it? Brennan's voice rose. You brought her here under false pretenses. Your boy forged a letter and now she's living here like what? Caleb's voice went quiet. Dangerous, Brennan hesitated. Like something she's not, he finished. She's a guest, Caleb said. Nothing more. Then make it official. Brennan crossed his arms. Marry her or send her away. The words hung in the air like gunsmoke. Eleanor saw Caleb's fists clench, saw the fury in his eyes, saw him holding himself back from violence by sheer force of will. I won't be threatened on my own land. Coughlin held up a hand. Nobody's threatening, but Mr. Brennan has a point. This situation looks bad. If you won't marry her, maybe the lady should move into town. Stay at the hotel. That would quiet things down. Caleb turned to Eleanor. Their eyes met. In that moment, she saw everything he wasn't saying, the fear, the exhaustion, the weight of trying to protect everyone and failing. She could leave, should leave. It would solve everything, but Noah was standing in the doorway behind her, watching, and she couldn't let him see her run. I'll stay at the hotel, she heard herself say. If it helps. Caleb's expression went blank. Fine. Good, Coughlin nodded. We'll escort you into town. That won't be necessary, Eleanor said. I insist. Caleb stepped between them. You'll leave her alone. I'll take her myself. Brennan looked like he wanted to argue, but Coughlin nodded. Tomorrow morning, first thing. They mounted up, rode out, leaving dust and tension in their wake. Eleanor stood frozen, heart pounding. She'd just agreed to leave. Again. Always leaving. Noah came out onto the porch, eyes wide. Why are you leaving? Just for a little while, Eleanor said, voice steadier than she felt. That's what Ma said. Noah's voice broke. And she didn't come back. The words shattered something in the air. Caleb turned to his son, face stricken. Noah. But the boy was already running, disappearing into the barn. Caleb looked at Eleanor. For the first time, she saw him completely undone. I'm sorry, he said. Don't be. This is my fault. No, she shook her head. It's the world's fault, but we're the ones who have to live in it. She walked past him into the house, began packing her things. Behind her, she heard Caleb's boots on the porch, the creak of wood as he sat, the sound of a man trying to breathe through pain. And Eleanor understood finally what Noah had been trying to fix with that letter. Not loneliness, the suffocating weight of loss, a man going under, unable to ask for help. That night, Caleb found Noah in the barn loft, curled up in the hay, tears on his face. He climbed up slowly, sat beside his son. For a long time, neither spoke. She's not leaving because of you, Caleb said finally. Yes, she is. No, she's leaving because people won't let her stay. He paused. There's a difference, Noah wiped his eyes. I thought if she came, you'd be happy again. Caleb felt something crack in his chest. I know. Are you mad at me? No. He pulled Noah close, felt the boy's small body shake with sobs. I'm not mad, I'm just tired. Of me. Of everything. Caleb's voice went rough. But not you, never you. They sat together in the dark. Caleb realized he'd been trying so hard to protect his son from pain that he'd forgotten how to let him feel anything else. In the house, Eleanor lay awake, listening to the wind, thinking about choices. She could leave tomorrow, go back east, start over somewhere else. But when she closed her eyes, she saw Noah's face, saw the hope dying in his eyes. Some things mattered more than safety. Morning came too fast. Caleb loaded her bag into the wagon without a word. Noah sat between them, silent, pale. The ride into town was long. The sun climbed higher, turning the air heavy and still. At the hotel, Caleb carried her bag inside, paid for a week in advance. The clerk gave them both a knowing look that made Eleanor's skin crawl. Outside, Noah threw his arms around her waist, held on tight. "Don't forget me," he whispered. "Never," she promised. Caleb stood apart, hat in his hands, face unreadable. "Thank you," Eleanor said, "for everything." He nodded once. Then he climbed into the wagon and they drove away. Eleanor stood on the dusty street, watched them go, wondered if doing the right thing was supposed to feel this much like breaking. The hotel room was clean but lifeless. Bed, chair, washstand, window looking onto Main Street. Eleanor unpacked her few belongings, sat on the edge of the bed, listened to the sounds of town below. Wagons rattling, voices calling, the ordinary noise of people living their ordinary lives. She had never felt more alone. 3 days passed like slow death. She took meals in the hotel dining room, endured the stares and whispers, walked through town with her head high, buying thread and fabric she didn't need just to have something to do. Every evening she sat by the window, watched the road that led out of town, hoping to see a familiar wagon. It never came. On the fourth morning, there was a knock at her door. She opened it to find a young woman in the hallway. Barely 20, red hair pinned loosely, basket over her arm. "Miss Ward, I'm Annie Cooper. I work at the Mercantile." She held out the basket. "I brought you some bread. Fresh this morning." Eleanor blinked, caught off guard. "That's very kind, but I didn't order any." "I know." Annie's smile was tentative but genuine. "I just thought you might like it, being new in town and all." Eleanor took the basket slowly. "Thank you." Annie hesitated. "May I come in, just for a moment?" Eleanor stepped aside. The girl slipped into the room, glanced nervously at the door as if afraid of being seen. "I don't mean to intrude," Annie said quickly, "but I wanted you to know that not everyone in town thinks badly of you. Just most of them." Annie winced. "It's not personal. People here, they're scared of things they don't understand. A woman traveling alone, staying with a widower. It doesn't fit how they think things should be. And how should things be? Safe, predictable." Annie sat in the chair by the window. "My mother died when I was 12. My father raised me and my 3 brothers on his own. People talked then, too. Said it wasn't proper. Said he should remarry or send me to live with relatives." She looked down at her hands. "He didn't. He kept us together. And people eventually stopped talking." Eleanor sat on the bed. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I saw what happened when those men came for you. I saw Noah Hart's face when his father drove away." Annie's voice went quiet. "That boy's been carrying the weight of his mother's death for 3 years. And when you came, I saw him smile for the first time since the funeral." Eleanor's throat tightened. "I didn't mean to make things harder for them." "You didn't. The town did." Annie stood, moved toward the door, then paused. "If you need anything, come find me at the Mercantile. And don't let them drive you away." She slipped out before Eleanor could respond. Eleanor sat alone with the bread still warm from the oven. For the first time since coming to town, she didn't feel quite so invisible. That afternoon, walking past the church, she heard shouting. A group of men had gathered near the town hall. Tom Brennan, Marshall Coughlin, several others she didn't recognize. And in the center, Caleb, face like carved stone. Eleanor stopped, heart hammering. "You can't just ignore this Hart." Brennan's voice carried. "The boy forged your name. That's fraud." "He's 8 years old," Caleb said evenly. He didn't understand what he was doing. He understood enough to lie. "He's a child. That doesn't excuse it." Coughlin stepped forward. "Mr. Hart, the law is the law. The boy committed fraud. The woman came here under false pretenses, and you allowed her to stay under your roof without proper oversight. That's 3 violations." Eleanor felt ice slide down her spine, started to move closer. A hand caught her arm. Annie appeared out of nowhere, face pale. "Don't," she whispered. "You'll only make it worse. They're punishing him for being kind." They're punishing him for breaking the rules. Annie's grip tightened. And if you step in now, they'll use it against both of you. Eleanor wanted to scream, wanted to run forward and tell them all exactly what she thought of their rules and their judgment and their cruelty. But she stayed still, because Annie was right. Caleb's voice cut through the argument. What do you want from me? An acknowledgement, Coughlin said, that what happened was wrong, that the boy acted improperly, that you take full responsibility. I do. Publicly. Caleb's jaw tightened. Fine. And there's the matter of restitution. Brennan's voice was cold. The woman traveled all this way on a false promise. She's entitled to compensation for her trouble. I already paid for her return ticket. That's not enough. She gave up her life in Philadelphia. Lost time. Lost wages. Lost opportunities. Brennan crossed his arms. You owe her more than a train ticket. Eleanor's stomach turned. This wasn't about justice. This was about humiliation. How much? Caleb asked quietly. $200. The number hung in the air like a noose. Eleanor knew what that meant. $200 was more than most men made in 6 months. It was the price of a horse, a season's worth of supplies, a child's future. I don't have that kind of money, Caleb said. Then you'll work it off, or sell something. Like what? Brennan's smile was thin. I hear you've got a good breeding mare. That would cover it. Caleb went pale. That mare's valuable. I know, which is why it's fair compensation. Eleanor couldn't stay silent any longer. Pulled free from Annie, stepped forward. Stop. Every head turned. Coughlin frowned. Ma'am, this doesn't concern you. It concerns me entirely. Eleanor walked straight to Caleb, ignoring the stares. I don't want his money. I don't want his horse. I came here of my own free will. I stayed of my own choice. He owes me nothing. The law says otherwise, Brennan said. Then the law is wrong. Eleanor's voice stayed steady, cold. You want someone to punish me. I'm the one who accepted the invitation. I'm the one who stayed when I should have left. Mr. Hart tried to send me away. I refused. That's not what happened, Caleb said sharply. Isn't it? She looked at him. You offered me a return ticket the moment I arrived. You told me I couldn't stay. I insisted. Because Noah? Because I had nowhere else to go. She turned back to Coughlin. If there's been any impropriety, it's mine, not his, not the boy's, mine. Coughlin studied her, expression unreadable. You're saying you manipulated the situation. I'm saying I took advantage of a child's kindness and a man's honor. The lies tasted like ash, but she forced them out. If anyone should pay restitution, it's me. You don't have $200? Brennan said flatly. No, but I have time. Eleanor lifted her chin. I'll work it off. Whatever needs doing in this town, I'll do it, but you'll leave Mr. Hart and his son alone. Silence fell over the group. Caleb was staring at her like she'd lost her mind. Eleanor, don't. It's done. She didn't look at him. Couldn't. Do we have an agreement, Marshal? Coughlin glanced at Brennan, who looked deeply unsatisfied. What kind of work? Whatever you decide is fair. And you'll stay in town, not at the Hart Ranch. Agreed. Coughlin nodded slowly. All right, we'll draw up the terms. He gestured to the others. They moved toward the town hall, leaving Eleanor and Caleb standing alone in the street. Caleb grabbed her arm. What the hell did you just do? What you couldn't. She pulled free. I gave them someone to blame. You just sold yourself into servitude. I bought you your freedom. Her voice shook. You and Noah, that's all that matters. You don't owe me anything. I owe that boy everything. She finally looked at him, eyes fierce. He wrote that letter because he wanted to save you. The least I can do is make sure he doesn't lose you in the process. Caleb looked like he wanted to argue, to rage, to tear the whole situation apart. But his voice came out broken. I can't let you do this. You can't stop me. Eleanor stepped back. Go home, Mr. Hart. Take care of your son. Let me do what I came here to do. She turned, walked away before he could see her crease. The terms were drawn up that evening. Eleanor would work off her debt through labor. Cleaning, cooking, mending, whatever the town required. She would be paid a small wage, most of which would go toward the $200. At the current rate, it would take her nearly 2 years to clear the debt. She signed without hesitation. Annie found her afterward. Annie found her, sitting on the hotel steps in the dark. "You're insane," the girl said, sat beside her. "Probably. 2 years. I've survived worse." Annie shook her head. "Why would you do this?" Eleanor didn't answer right away. She watched the stars appearing one by one in the darkening sky, thought about a little boy who'd written a letter in secret because he didn't know how else to ask for help. "Because someone had to," she said finally. The work started the next morning. Mrs. Brennan had drawn up a list of tasks that would have broken most women. Eleanor was to clean the church, wash linens for the hotel, mend clothes for anyone who asked, help prepare meals for community events. The wages were minimal, the hours long, the work backbreaking. Eleanor did it all without complaint. She scrubbed floors until her hands bled, hauled water until her shoulders screamed, mended torn shirts and patched worn trousers until her eyes burned from close work by candlelight. And through it all, she kept her head high, mouth shut. The town watched her, some with suspicion, some with grudging respect. Whispers followed her everywhere, but she ignored them, focused on the work. Annie brought her food when she forgot to eat. The hotel clerk started leaving fresh water in her room without being asked. And one morning, Eleanor found a jar of salve for her raw hands sitting outside her door. No note, she never saw Caleb. But Noah came. He appeared one afternoon while she was hanging laundry behind the hotel, face nervous and hopeful. "Ma'am," Eleanor turned, heart lurching. "Noah, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to see you." He shifted from foot to foot. "Pa doesn't know I came." "You shouldn't be here." "I know, but I had to tell you something." He stepped closer, voice dropping. "It's my fault, all of it, and you're paying for what I did." "Noah," "Pa told me what happened, what you said to the marshal, that you took the blame." His eyes filled with tears. "You shouldn't have done that." Eleanor set down the laundry basket, crouched in front of him. "Listen to me. What you did writing that letter, it wasn't wrong, it was brave. You saw your father hurting, and you tried to help. That's not something to be ashamed of. But you're working like a servant because of me. I'm working because this town needed someone to blame, and I was willing to be that person." She gripped his shoulders gently. "That's not your fault. That's their fault. Pa says you shouldn't have to pay for their mistakes. Your father's right, but the world doesn't work the way it should. Sometimes good people pay for bad rules." She wiped a tear from his cheek. "But I'm all right, I promise. Are you coming back?" The question broke her. "I don't know." "Pa misses you." Noah's voice was desperate. "He does. He won't say it, but I can tell. He doesn't talk at all anymore. And at night I hear him walking around, like he can't sleep." Eleanor pulled him into a hug, held him tight. "I can't, not yet. But that doesn't mean I don't think about you. Both of you." He clung to her, small body shaking. "I wish I never wrote that letter." "Don't say that." She pulled back, looked him in the eye. "That letter brought me here. And being here knowing you, that's the best thing that's happened to me in a long time. Don't you dare regret it." He nodded, wiping his eyes. "I have to go, before Pa worries." "Go." Noah hesitated, then kissed her cheek and ran. Eleanor stood alone in the alley, watched him disappear around the corner. Let herself cry for the first time since signing the agreement. Weeks passed, the work continued. Eleanor's hands grew calloused. Her back ached constantly. Exhaustion became a permanent state, but she kept going. One evening, carrying a load of mended clothes back to the mercantile, she heard voices from the alley beside the general store. "She can't keep this up forever." Annie's voice. Eleanor paused, not wanting to eavesdrop, unable to move. "She will, though," another woman, younger, uncertain. "Have you seen her? She never stops." "Because she doesn't have a choice." Annie sounded angry. Brennan made sure of that. It was legal. Legal doesn't make it right. The sound of something being set down hard. "That woman came here looking for a new start, and we turned her into unpaid labor because we couldn't stand the idea that maybe Caleb Hart wasn't as broken as we thought." Silence. Then the other voice quieter. "What do you mean?" "I mean we liked him better when he was suffering. when he was the tragic widower raising his son alone. It made us feel useful, bringing him casseroles, checking in on the boy. Annie's voice went bitter. But when someone came along who might actually help, who might make him happy again, we couldn't have that, so we destroyed it. Eleanor's chest tightened. It wasn't just us, the other woman protested. The law is what we make it, and we made it cruel. Annie's footsteps moved closer to the alley entrance. I'm ashamed of this town, and I'm ashamed I didn't speak up sooner. Eleanor stepped back, not wanting to be caught listening, hurried to the mercantile, delivered the clothes, walked back to the hotel in a daze. That night she sat at the window, stared out at the dark town, thought about cruelty and kindness and the thin line between them. She thought about leaving, just walking away from the debt, from the town, from all of it. But then she thought about Noah's face, about the hope in his eyes when he'd asked her to come back. She couldn't leave, not yet. The breaking point came 6 weeks after the agreement was signed. Eleanor was cleaning the church, sweeping, dusting, polishing the pews. When she heard the door open behind her, she turned, expecting Reverend Michaels. Instead, she saw Caleb. He stood in the doorway, hat in his hands, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Mr. Hart, her voice came out steadier than she felt. You shouldn't be here. I know. He stepped inside, closed the door. I came anyway. If someone sees, I don't care. He walked toward her slowly. I can't do this anymore. Do what? Watch you destroy yourself for something that wasn't your fault. His voice was rough, strained. You've been working yourself to death for 6 weeks for a debt you don't owe, for a crime you didn't commit. I made a choice you shouldn't have had to make. He stopped a few feet away. Eleanor, this has to stop. It will in about 18 more months. That's not acceptable. It's the agreement. Then I'll break it. His hands clenched on his hat. I'll go to Coughlin, tell him the truth, that you lied, that I was the one responsible. No, the word came out sharp. You'll do no such thing. And why not? Because they'll punish you. She set down her dustcloth. And worse, they'll punish Noah. Do you want your son to grow up being known as the boy whose father was publicly shamed? Do you want him carrying that? I want him to stop asking me every day when you're coming home. The words landed like a blow. Eleanor turned away, throat tight. I'm not coming home. Why not? Because there's no home for me there. She forced herself to look at him. You made that clear when you drove me into town and left me at the hotel. I did that to protect you. You did it because it was easier than fighting for me. Caleb flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? Her voice shook. You had a choice, Caleb, when those men came to your ranch, when they demanded you send me away. You could have told them no. You could have stood your ground. But you didn't. I was trying to keep you safe. I didn't ask for safe. The words burst out of her, loud in the quiet church. I asked for a chance, a place to belong, and the moment it got difficult, you gave up. I gave up. His voice rose to match hers. I let them humiliate me. I accepted responsibility for something my son did. I stood there and took their judgment because I thought it would spare you. And then you let me take the blame anyway. You didn't give me a choice. I gave you every choice. Eleanor's hands were shaking. I could have left the moment you told me you didn't write that letter. I could have walked away, but I stayed because I saw a little boy who needed help and a man who was drowning in grief, and I thought, her voice broke, I thought maybe I could matter. Just a little, just enough to make staying worth it. You do matter. Not enough, she wiped her eyes angrily. Not enough for you to fight for me when it counted. Caleb stared at her, face stricken. What do you want from me? Nothing. The word came out flat, final. I don't want anything anymore. Leaner. Her skirts rustled as she turned back to her work, the sound crisp in the quiet church. She picked up the dustcloth with trembling hands. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then she heard his footsteps, slow and heavy, walking toward the door. He paused at the threshold. For what it's worth, he said quietly, you mattered enough for me to sell the mare. Eleanor's hands went still. What the mayor Brennan wanted, I sold her 3 days after you signed that agreement. His voice was hollow. I gave the money to Coughlin, told him to apply it to your debt. She turned slowly. You didn't? I did, anonymously. He doesn't know it came from me. Caleb met her eyes. It won't clear the debt entirely, but it'll cut the time in half. Eleanor couldn't breathe. Why would you do that? Because I'm a coward when it comes to standing up in public. But I'm not a coward when it comes to protecting you. He put his hat on. I'm sorry I made you think otherwise. He left before she could respond. Eleanor stood alone in the church, heart hammering, realized that everything she thought she knew about Caleb Hart had just shifted. That night, she went to see Marshal Coughlin. He received her in his small office, looking surprised and wary. Miss Ward, what can I do for you? I want to know about the payment made on my debt. Coughlin's expression went carefully blank. What payment? Don't play games with me, Marshal. Someone paid a significant sum toward my debt. I want to know who. That's confidential. Is it legal to accept anonymous payments? It's unusual, but not illegal. He leaned back in his chair. Why does it matter? Because I want to know if I'm in someone else's debt now. You're not. The payment was made with no strings attached. He studied her. Does it bother you that someone helped? It bothers me that someone felt they had to. Eleanor sat down without being invited. I made an agreement. I'm honoring it. I don't need charity. Even if it means your freedom comes sooner. Freedom isn't freedom if it's bought by someone else. Coughlin was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out a ledger, opened it. The payment cut your debt almost in half. At your current rate of work, you'll be free in 9 months instead of 18. 9 months. It felt like a lifetime and no time at all. And after that, Eleanor asked, am I free to leave? You're free to do whatever you want. He closed the ledger. But between you and me, Miss Ward, I think you've paid enough already. The town doesn't seem to think so. The town's starting to change its mind. He met her eyes. You've worked harder than anyone expected. You haven't complained. You haven't caused trouble. People notice that. Do they notice that they're wrong? Coughlin's mouth twitched. Some do. Others are too stubborn. But give it time. This town's not as hard as it pretends to be. Eleanor stood. Thank you, Marshal. Miss Ward. He waited until she looked back. For what it's worth, I think Hart made a mistake letting you go. She didn't respond, just walked out into the night, carrying the weight of 9 more months, and the knowledge that somewhere in this town, Caleb Hart had sold the thing he loved most to buy her a little bit of freedom, and she didn't know whether to curse him or thank him for it. The next morning brought rain, steady, cold, turning the streets to mud and driving everyone indoors. Eleanor stood at her window, watched water stream down the glass, felt the chill seep through the walls. She had laundry to wash, floors to scrub, mending waiting in a basket by her bed. The work never stopped. Rain or shine, she dressed quickly, pinned her hair, headed downstairs. The hotel lobby was empty except for the clerk, who nodded at her as she passed. Outside, the rain soaked through her shawl within seconds. She ducked her head, hurried toward the church where she was supposed to clean the sanctuary before Sunday service. The door was unlocked. She slipped inside, shaking water from her clothes, and stopped. Someone had already been there. The floors were swept, the pews polished. Fresh candles stood in their holders. The windows had been washed clean. Even the hymnals were stacked neatly, worn covers aligned. Eleanor stood dripping in the doorway, confused and oddly unsettled. Looking for work. She spun around. Reverend Michael stood in the doorway to his office, a slight smile on his weathered face. I was supposed to clean this morning, Eleanor said. Someone beat you to it. Came before dawn. He walked toward her, steps slow and measured, left no name, just did the work and disappeared. Who? I have my suspicions. He studied her with kind, knowing eyes, but I think you might already know. Eleanor's throat tightened. She looked around at the spotless church, at the care evident in every corner. Felt something crack in her chest. Why would he do this, she whispered. Because guilt has a way of making men do things they can't say out loud. Michaels gestured to the pews. Sit with me a moment. She hesitated, then nodded. They sat in the front row, the rain drumming on the roof above them. For a long time, neither spoke. "I've known Caleb Hart since he was a boy," Michael said finally. "Watched him grow up, marry, lose his wife. Watched him turn into stone, trying to hold himself together." He paused. "And I watched him start to thaw when you arrived. That's not what happened, isn't it?" The Reverend's voice was gentle. "I saw him the day you came, saw the panic in his eyes when he realized what his son had done. But I also saw the way he looked at you when you refused to crumble under the town's judgment, like he'd forgotten people could be that strong." Eleanor stared down at her hands, raw and red from work. "He let them send me away." "He did, and it's been eating him alive ever since." Michaels leaned back. "Some men fight with words, some with fists, and some fight the only way they know how. In silence, in secret, in ways that cost them everything but their pride. That's not enough." "No," he agreed, "but it's a start." Eleanor looked at him. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've been a reverend in this town for 30 years. I've seen what happens when good people let fear make their decisions. I've seen marriages destroyed, families broken, lives wasted, and all because someone was too afraid to fight for what mattered." His eyes were sad. "I don't want to see it happen again." "What do you expect me to do?" "I expect you to make your own choice, not the one the town wants, not the one Caleb Lodge wants, yours." He stood slowly. "But I hope you'll remember that forgiveness isn't weakness, and that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is give someone another chance." He walked back to his office, leaving Eleanor alone in the clean, quiet church. She sat there for a long time, listening to the rain, thinking about chances and choices and the difference between them. The days that followed fell into a strange new pattern. Eleanor would arrive at her assigned task to find half the work already done. Floors swept, water hauled, firewood stacked, always before dawn, always anonymous. But she knew. On the third week of this strange dance, trouble found her in a different form. Eleanor was walking back to the hotel after delivering mended clothes, the sun setting behind the mountains, when two men stepped out from the alley beside the livery stable. She didn't recognize either of them, trail dust on their coats, gun belts slung low, eyes cold and measuring. "Mrs. Ward." The taller one smiled without warmth. "Or is it Miss Ward?" Hard to keep track. Eleanor's grip tightened on her empty laundry basket. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" "Mr. Clayton sent us." The second man moved to block the street behind her. "Said to deliver a message." Her blood went cold. "I have nothing to say to Mr. Clayton." "That's the problem, see?" The tall one stepped closer. Close enough that she could smell whiskey on his breath. "You owe him a year's service. Contract's legal. He's been patient waiting for this little situation to resolve itself. But his patience is wearing thin. I'm not going back to Philadelphia. That's not your choice anymore." His hand moved to his gun belt, not drawing, just resting there. A threat. "We're here to escort you back." Mr. Clayton said willing or not, but he'd prefer willing. Eleanor's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm married now. The contract is void." "To a rancher who doesn't want you." The man laughed. "That's what Mr. Clayton figured. A marriage of convenience. Easy enough to annul. And when it is, you'll owe double. 2 years' service for the trouble you've caused." The second man grabbed her arm. "Now we can do this easy, or take your hand off her." Caleb's voice cut through the twilight like a blade. He stood at the corner of the mercantile, rifle in hand. Not aimed, not yet, but the message was unmistakable. The two men froze. Calculated odds. The tall one's hand twitched toward his gun. "Don't." Caleb's voice went quiet, deadly. "I've killed men for less, and unlike you, I don't miss." Marshal Coughlin emerged from the mercantile behind Caleb, hand on his own weapon. "Gentlemen, I don't believe we've met. I'm the law in this town, and threatening a woman on my streets is a good way to see the inside of my jail." The tall man released Eleanor's arm. "Step back. We're just delivering a message." "Message delivered." Coughlin's voice was hard. "Now deliver yourselves out of my town. You've got 10 minutes to be on your horses and gone. After that, I start shooting." The two men exchanged glances, then melted into the shadows. Eleanor stood frozen, her arm aching where she'd been grabbed. Not from pain, from rage. Caleb walked to her. Are you hurt? No. Her voice shook. I'm furious. Good. He looked down the street where the men had vanished. Fury's better than fear. But Eleanor, this means Clayton's not giving up. He'll come himself soon. Let him come. When he does, Caleb paused, met her eyes. When he does, I won't let him take you. Not without a fight. For the first time since she'd left the ranch, Eleanor saw something in Caleb's face that wasn't guilt or hesitation. It was resolve. The town began to notice, too. Someone's been helping you, Annie mentioned one afternoon. Eleanor was mending shirts at the mercantile. So it seems. People are talking. People are always talking. Annie smiled. True. But this time they're saying maybe Caleb Hart isn't as cold as they thought. Eleanor's hand stilled on the fabric. They know it's him. They suspect. Nobody's seen him. But who else would it be? Annie leaned closer. Mrs. Brennan's furious. She thinks it undermines the whole point of the agreement. The point was punishment. Exactly. Annie's eyes sparkled. And if someone's easing the punishment, it means the town's judgment meant nothing. Eleanor didn't know what to think. Part of her was angry that Caleb thought he could fix things with secret gestures and anonymous help. Part of her was touched that he was trying it all. And part of her, the part she tried hard to ignore, wanted to see him. To talk to him, to understand what he was thinking. But he never showed himself. He was a ghost, helping in silence. It drove her quietly mad. 3 weeks after the church incident, Eleanor was walking back to the hotel after delivering mended clothes when she heard shouting. A crowd had gathered near the town hall. She hurried closer, saw Marshal Coughlin standing on the steps, face grim. Beside him stood a man Eleanor had never seen before. Tall, expensively dressed, the kind of face that expected obedience. Under legal authority, the stranger was saying, voice carrying over the crowd. The woman is bound by contract, and I've come to collect. Eleanor's blood went cold. She pushed through the crowd, heart hammering. What's going on? She demanded. Coughlin turned to her, expression apologetic. Miss Ward, this is Mr. Edmund Clayton. He claims to be your former employer. Eleanor stared at the man. Recognition slammed into her like a fist. Edmund Clayton, the Philadelphia lawyer she'd worked for as a housekeeper before answering the matrimonial advertisement. The man who'd promised her wages and security and delivered neither. Miss Ward, Clayton's smile was cold. How unexpected to find you here. What do you want? Her voice was steadier than she felt. What I'm owed. He produced a sheaf of papers from his coat. You left Philadelphia without notice, without fulfilling the terms of your employment contract. That constitutes breach of agreement. I gave you 3 months' notice, which I did not accept. He showed the papers. According to the contract you signed, you were obligated to provide 6 months' notice or pay a penalty of $100. You did neither. The crowd murmured. Eleanor felt the ground tilt beneath her. I don't have $100. So I've been informed, which is why I've come to offer an alternative. Clayton's smile widened. You'll return with me to Philadelphia. Work off the debt. At your previous wages, that should take approximately 1 year. No, well, the word came out flat, hard. It's not a request, Miss Ward. It's a legal obligation. She's already working off a debt here, Coughlin interjected. She can't leave until it's settled. Then I'll purchase her debt from the town. Clayton looked around at the crowd. How much does she owe? Coughlin hesitated. About $120. I'll pay it in full. Today. Clayton pulled out a bank draft. In exchange, Miss Ward will accompany me back to Philadelphia to fulfill her original contract. The crowd erupted in whispers. Eleanor stood frozen, mind racing. This couldn't be happening. She couldn't go back to Philadelphia, back to that house, that man, that life of servitude and silence. I won't go, she said. You don't have a choice. She does if she's married. Every head turned. Caleb stood at the edge of the crowd, hat in his hands, face set like stone. The crowd parted like water around stone as Caleb walked forward, his boots heavy on the packed dirt. Each step deliberate. A man who'd finally stopped running. Clayton's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? A woman's employment contract is void if she marries. Caleb's voice carried clear across the town square. It's the law. Miss Ward isn't married. Not yet. Caleb stopped in front of Eleanor. His storm cloud eyes found hers, held them. But she will be, if she'll have me. The world went silent. Eleanor stared at him, unable to breathe, unable to think. Around them, the crowd pressed closer, waiting. Mr. Hart, she said carefully, what are you doing? Something I should have done weeks ago. His voice was quiet but steady. I'm asking you to marry me. You don't mean that. I do. You're only saying it because of him. She gestured to Clayton. Because you feel obligated. I'm saying it because I'm tired of being a coward. Caleb's jaw tightened. I let you take the blame for something that wasn't your fault. I let them turn you into a servant because I was afraid of what people would think. And I've spent every day since trying to make up for it in ways that don't cost me anything. He paused. I'm done hiding. If you'll marry me, I'll stand up in front of this entire town and claim you. Not out of duty, not out of guilt, but because I choose you. Eleanor's eyes burned. You don't know what you're asking. Yes, I do. His voice gentled. I'm asking you to take a chance on a man who's made every mistake possible, who's let you down, who doesn't deserve you, but who's willing to spend the rest of his life trying to be worthy of you. Caleb, if you say no, I'll understand, and I'll find another way to stop this man from taking you. He held out his hand. But if you say yes, we'll face whatever comes next together. The crowd waited. Clayton looked furious. Coughlin watched with something like hope in his eyes. And Eleanor looked at Caleb's outstretched hand and thought about all the reasons she should say no. The practical ones, the safe ones, the ones that made sense. Then she thought about Noah, about the ranch, about the way Caleb had sold his mare to buy her freedom, about the way he'd cleaned the church in secret, hauled water before dawn, done 100 small things that cost him everything and gave him nothing but the knowledge that he'd helped. She thought about the man he'd been and the man he was trying to become, and she put her hand in his. Yes. The word was barely a whisper, but it shattered the silence like thunder. Caleb's fingers closed around hers, strong and sure. He looked at Coughlin. We need a reverend. I'm already here. Michael stepped forward from the crowd, a slight smile on his face. Shall we proceed? Clayton surged forward. This is absurd. You can't just marry her to avoid a legal obligation. Actually, Coughlin said mildly, he can. Marriage nullifies employment contracts. It's settled law. Then I'll challenge it. I'll take this to a judge. You can try. Michael's voice was calm but firm. But by the time you find a judge willing to hear the case, they'll already be married. And no judge in this territory will force a woman to leave her husband to fulfill an old employment contract. Clayton's face went red. This is fraud. This, Caleb said quietly, is a man protecting the woman he loves. If you have a problem with that, take it up with me. The two men stared at each other. Clayton was taller, better dressed, wealthier. But Caleb had something Clayton didn't. The weight of a man who'd finally stopped running. Clayton looked away first. His face went red. This is fraud. I'll take this too. You'll take it nowhere. Marshal Coughlin stepped forward, hand resting on his gun belt. His voice was calm but hard as iron. I've been reviewing those contracts you showed me, Mr. Clayton. Funny thing, the notary seal is from the wrong county for the date you claim. Clayton's face went pale. That's a clerical error. Is it? Coughlin pulled a telegram from his pocket. I wired Philadelphia. Seems 7 other women have filed complaints about your employment practices, fraudulent contracts, excessive penalties, always young women with no family to protect them. The crowd murmured, angry now, turning against Clayton. This is preposterous, Clayton sputtered. I'm a respected lawyer. I have connections. Had connections. Coughlin gestured to his deputy, a broad-shouldered man who'd been waiting at the edge of the crowd. The territorial judge issued a warrant this morning. Edmund Clayton, you're under arrest for fraud, extortion, and attempted coercion. The deputy moved forward with iron shackles. Clayton's eyes went wild. He looked at Eleanor one last time. You'll regret this. When I get out. You won't. Eleanor's voice cut through his threat. Calm. Final. 7 women are testifying. The judge already has your forged documents. You're going to prison, Mr. Clayton, for a very long time. As the deputy led him away in chains, Clayton struggled, shouted threats. The crowd watched in silence. When he was finally out of sight, Eleanor let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Caleb's hand found hers. Squeezed. "It's over," he said quietly. "Yes," she agreed, "it is." Michaels gestured to the church steps. "Now then, shall we proceed with this wedding?" The crowd followed, buzzing with excitement and shock. Eleanor let Caleb lead her up the steps, her hand still in his, heart racing so fast she thought it might burst. At the top, Michaels turned to face them. "This is highly irregular. But then again, so is everything about your situation." He looked at Caleb. "Are you certain about this?" "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Michaels turned to Eleanor. "And you?" She looked at Caleb, really looked at him, saw the fear in his eyes, the determination, the hope. "Yes," she said, "I'm certain." "Then let's make this official before anyone changes their mind." The ceremony was short, simple, witnessed by half the town. Michaels spoke the words quickly, barely giving either of them time to think. Caleb repeated the vows in a voice that shook just slightly. Eleanor's voice was clear, stronger, carrying over the whispers of the crowd. When Michaels asked for the ring, Caleb hesitated. "I don't have—" Annie pushed forward, pulling a thin silver band from her own finger. "Here, use this. You can replace it later." Caleb took it with a grateful nod, slipped it onto Eleanor's hand. It was too large, but she closed her fingers around it, held tight. "By the authority vested in me," Michael said, "I pronounce you husband and wife." He didn't tell Caleb to kiss the bride. The moment was too raw, too public, too strange for that kind of tradition. But Caleb lifted Eleanor's hand, pressed his lips to her knuckles, a gesture so gentle it made her throat ache. The crowd erupted in uncertain applause, some smiling, some frowning. Mrs. Brennan looked like she'd swallowed glass. Eleanor stood on the church steps, married to a man she barely knew, wearing a borrowed ring and a work-worn dress, the scent of lavender soap on her skin mixed with prairie dust and sagebrush. Old Eleanor and new Eleanor merged into one, and felt more seen than she'd ever felt in her life. Caleb turned to Coughlin. "The debt. Now that we're married, it's void," the marshal confirmed. "Marriage transfers financial responsibility. Any debt she owed becomes yours. And since you're the one who paid most of it already," he shrugged, "consider it settled." Caleb's shoulders sagged with relief. Annie stepped forward, hugged Eleanor fiercely. "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Hart." The name hit Eleanor like a wave. Mrs. Hart. She was married. She had a husband, a home, a family. She looked at Caleb. He was watching her with something like wonder in his eyes. "We should go," he said quietly, "before someone decides to object." He helped her into his wagon, parked near the church. The crowd watched them leave, still murmuring, still uncertain. As they drove out of town, Eleanor finally let herself breathe. "That really just happened," she said. "It did. We're married. We are." Caleb kept his eyes on the road. "Are you going to regret it?" "I don't know yet. Are you?" No?" He said it without hesitation, "but I need you to know something." "What?" He pulled the wagon to a stop, turned to face her. "I didn't ask you to marry me just to save you from that man. I asked because I've been thinking about it for weeks. Since before you moved to the hotel, since the day you stood on my porch and told me I was afraid of gossip. Caleb, I don't expect you to love me. I don't even expect you to like me much right now, but I need you to know that this isn't just convenience. It's not just guilt." He paused. "I want you in my life, in Noah's life. I want you to be part of our family. If you'll let me prove it to you." Eleanor looked at him, this hard, quiet man who'd finally found his voice at the moment it mattered most. "You sold your mare for me," she said. He nodded. "I did. Why? Because you were suffering and I couldn't stand it." His voice went rough. "Because you mattered more than a horse, more than pride, more than what anyone thought. You should have told me. I know, but I didn't know how. He looked down at his hands. I'm not good with words. I'm better with action. But I'm trying to learn. Eleanor reached over, took his hand. Then teach me too, because I don't know how to be a wife. I don't know how to be a mother. I don't even know if I belong on a ranch in the middle of nowhere. You belong wherever you choose to be. Caleb's fingers tightened around hers. And if you choose to be with us, I'll spend every day making sure you know you made the right choice. She looked at their joined hands, his rough and scarred from work, hers red and raw from servitude. Two broken people trying to build something whole. Take me home, she said. The words felt like a promise. When they arrived at the ranch, Noah was sitting on the porch steps, kicking at the dirt. He looked up as the wagon approached. His face lit up like the sun. Eleanor, he ran toward them before Caleb had even stopped. Eleanor climbed down, caught him as he threw himself into her arms. You're back. You're really back. I'm back, she said, voice thick. For how long? She looked over his head at Caleb, who was climbing down from the wagon with a small smile on his face. For good, she said, if that's all right with you. Noah pulled back, eyes wide. Really? Really? Your father and I, she hesitated, not sure how to explain. We got married. The boy's mouth fell open. He looked from Eleanor to Caleb and back again. You did. We did, Caleb confirmed, which means Eleanor's going to live here with us, permanently. For a moment, Noah just stared. Then he let out a whoop of joy so loud it startled the horses. I knew it. I knew you'd come back. I knew Pa would fix it. He danced around them, laughing. Maybe wait a bit on telling everyone at church, Caleb said dryly. Give people time to adjust. But Noah was already running toward the barn, shouting about how he needed to clean out the spare room and make it nice for Eleanor even though she'd stayed there before. Eleanor watched him go, heart full to bursting. He's happy, she said. He's been miserable since you left. Caleb stood beside her, close but not touching. We both have been. She turned to look at him. What happens now? Now we figure it out, day by day. He paused. I know this isn't what you expected when you came here. I know it's not a real marriage. Not yet. But, Caleb, she stopped him, it's real enough, and the rest, we'll find it as we go. He nodded slowly. The spare room is yours, for as long as you want it. No pressure, no expectations. Thank you. They stood together in the yard, the sun sinking low on the horizon, painting everything gold. From the barn came the sound of Noah singing, off-key and joyful, and it was the most beautiful sound Eleanor had ever heard. That night, after a simple dinner and Noah's endless questions about the wedding, Eleanor climbed the stairs to the small room that had once been a sewing room and was now hers again. The bed was made with fresh linens. A vase of wildflowers sat on the washstand, and on the pillow lay a folded piece of paper. She picked it up, unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was Noah's. Careful, deliberate, each letter formed with concentration. Dear Eleanor, welcome home. Love, Noah. P.S. Pa says he's sorry for everything. I think he means it. Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed, holding the note, let herself cry for the fourth time since arriving in this strange, hard, beautiful place. But this time she was crying because she was happy. Downstairs, Caleb stood at the window, looking out at the dark valley. Noah had finally gone to bed, exhausted from excitement. The house was quiet. He heard footsteps on the stairs, turned to see Eleanor in the doorway, the note in her hand. Thank you, she said, for the flowers. Noah picked them. And the note, also Noah. He paused, but the sentiment's mine. She walked into the room, stood beside him at the window. I read it, and I think you do mean it. I won't let you down. You might, we both might. She smiled slightly. But we'll figure it out together. They stood side by side, looking out at the land that stretched endlessly under the stars. And Eleanor thought that maybe, just maybe, this was what coming home felt like. The weeks that followed settled into a new rhythm, different from before, warmer. Eleanor moved her belongings into the spare room, but the door stayed open, a silent invitation neither of them was quite ready to accept yet. She cooked, cleaned, tended the garden, taught Noah his letters, all the things she'd done before. But now there was no debt hanging over her, No town watching with judgment. Now she was Mrs. Hart, and slowly, grudgingly, the town began to accept it. 2 weeks after the wedding, Marshal Coughlin rode out to the ranch. Eleanor's heart sank when she saw him approaching. More trouble. But Coughlin dismounted with a respectful nod. Mrs. Hart, Mr. Hart. I come on town business. What kind of business? Caleb's voice was wary. Coughlin pulled an envelope from his coat. The town council met last night. Mrs. Brennan called the meeting, actually. They voted to, well, here. He handed the envelope to Eleanor. Inside were bills. She counted twice, not believing. $200. The exact amount she'd worked off. I don't understand, Eleanor said. Restitution. Coughlin met her eyes. The council voted unanimously that the servitude agreement was unlawful. You were coerced under false pretenses. Mrs. Brennan herself argued that the town had acted shamefully, said we took advantage of a woman with no protection and we should make it right. Eleanor stared at the money. Agnes Brennan said that she did. Ask me to tell you. Coughlin shifted uncomfortably. Asked me to tell you she was wrong. About you, about all of it. Eleanor's throat tightened. She looked at Caleb. He was smiling. I don't want their money, she said quietly. Then donate it, Caleb suggested. Your school fund, maybe. Eleanor looked down at the bills, thought about all those weeks of bleeding hands and aching back, about humiliation and exhaustion. Then she thought about the 8 children who came to learn 3 mornings a week, about the future. Tell the council, she said to Coughlin, that I'm donating this money to build Sweetwater Valley's first proper schoolhouse, and I want them to know where every penny came from. Coughlin's smile was genuine. Yes, ma'am, I'll tell them. After he left, Caleb pulled Eleanor close. You turned their shame into something good. I turned it into something permanent, she corrected. So no one forgets what happened, and maybe so it never happens again. Mrs. Brennan nodded to her at church, stiff but civil. The women at the mercantile stopped whispering when she entered. And when Eleanor started teaching Noah more formally, other families asked if their children could join. Within a month, she had 8 students, meeting 3 mornings a week in the ranch house. Caleb built desks, ordered books from back east, supported her without question, and at night they sat on the porch, talking, learning each other. Tell me about Thomas, Caleb said one evening, 2 months after the wedding. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. He was kind, practical. We married because it made sense. 2 lonely people who needed companionship. She paused. I respected him, but I don't think I loved him. Not the way, she stopped. The way what? Caleb's voice was soft. The way I'm starting to love you. The words hung in the air between them, fragile as glass. Caleb turned to look at her, storm cloud eyes reflecting starlight. Eleanor, you don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. I love you too. He said it simply, honestly. I think I've loved you since you refused to leave when everyone else wanted you gone. She reached for his hand. He took it, held it. Can I kiss you? He asked. Please. The kiss was slow, tentative at first, then deeper. Years of loneliness pouring out. When they broke apart, Eleanor was breathless. Come to bed, she whispered. Not the spare room. Your room. Our room. Caleb's throat worked. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He stood, pulled her to her feet, led her upstairs. And that night, the spare room stayed empty. 2 months after the wedding, Eleanor discovered she was pregnant. She told Caleb while they were mending fence on the north pasture, the morning sun warm on her back, her hand steady on the wire. I'm with child. Caleb's hand stilled. He turned to look at her, face pale. You're certain? I'm certain, about 3 months along. I didn't realize at first. I thought it was just exhaustion from all the work. He set down his tools, walked a few steps away, stood with his back to her, shoulders tight. Caleb, what if it happens again? His voice cracked. What if I lose you the way I lost Sarah? Eleanor walked to him, put her hand on his back, felt him trembling. Then we face it together. But Caleb, I'm not Sarah. My body is different, and we have access to doctors now. She moved in front of him, made him look at her. This is our choice, together. Do you want this baby, more than anything. Tears in his eyes. But I'm terrified. So am I. She took his hand, placed it on her still flat stomach. But I believe we're strong enough, both of us, to face whatever comes. He pulled her close, held her, and slowly his breathing steadied. Noah was ecstatic when they told him, immediately started planning, making lists of names, drawing pictures of cribs and toys. What if it's a girl, he asked one evening. Then she'll be loved, Eleanor said. What if it's a boy? Also loved. Noah grinned. I hope it's both. Twins would be great. Caleb laughed, a sound that had become more common over the months, never lost its power to make Eleanor's heart sing. The pregnancy progressed. Eleanor worked through the morning sickness, the exhaustion. Caleb watched her like a hawk, worried over every twinge. But as the months passed and she grew round and healthy, his fear began to ease. By the time winter came, he could touch her belly without flinching, feel the baby kick without panic. And when Eleanor went into labor on a cold February morning, he was ready. The labor was long, 14 hours. Doctor present at Caleb's insistence. Eleanor in pain, but strong. Halfway through, there were complications. The baby breach. The doctor frowned. We may need to operate. No. Eleanor gripped the bedsheet, breathing hard. Turn the baby. I've seen it done. Mrs. Hart, I've delivered 12 babies. I know what I'm talking about. She looked at Caleb, who stood white-faced by the door. Trust me. He nodded. Do what she says. Eleanor talked the doctor through the procedure, using her midwifery knowledge, guiding his hands. The pain was excruciating, but she'd survived worse. And when the baby finally came screaming and healthy and perfect, Eleanor wept with relief. A girl, the doctor said, smiling. Caleb crossed to the bed, looked down at his daughter, at his wife. Both alive, both well. You did it, he whispered. You're both here. I told you, Dalian. Eleanor was exhausted, triumphant. Different body, different outcome. Noah crept into the room, Annie behind him. The boy's eyes were huge. Can I see her? Eleanor held out her arms. Caleb lifted Noah onto the bed. Careful, gentle. This is your sister, Eleanor said. Do you want to hold her? Noah nodded, too awed for words. Caleb placed the baby in his arms, showed him how to support her head. The boy stared down at the tiny face. She's so small. You were two once, Caleb said. What's her name? Eleanor and Caleb exchanged a look. They talked about this, decided together. Sarah, Eleanor said. Sarah Eleanor Hart, honoring the past while embracing the future. Noah's eyes filled. Like Ma. Like both of your mothers, Caleb said quietly. The boy looked up at Eleanor. You're really my ma now, aren't you? Eleanor's throat tightened. If you'll have me, I already have you. Noah smiled through tears, looked back at his baby sister. Hi, Sarah. I'm your big brother. I'm going to teach you everything. And in that moment, Eleanor finally had the answer to the question that had haunted her since the train station. How does a woman survive arriving at a station to meet a husband who never sent for her? She doesn't just survive. She builds a family. She creates a home. She becomes exactly who she was meant to be. 4 years passed like water through fingers. The ranch expanded. Caleb bought the adjacent 320 acres when the neighboring family moved east. Now they had nearly 1,000 acres, 60 head of cattle, a dozen horses. Sarah grew into a whirlwind of energy, all red curls and green eyes and questions, racing after Noah, trying to do everything her big brother did. Noah, 13, now was taller, less serious, still thoughtful, but with laughter coming easier. He talked about wanting to go to college, study engineering, come back and help modernize the ranch. Eleanor's school had grown to 20 students, a dedicated schoolhouse built on the edge of town. She'd hired an assistant teacher, a young woman who'd also answered a matrimonial advertisement and found happiness in Sweetwater Valley. Caleb sat on the town council, pushed for improvements, better roads, a proper doctor's office, women's suffrage and territorial elections. And on a warm evening in May 1883, the Hart family gathered on the porch for supper. 4 of them now, plus Annie, who'd become like family, who brought news and laughter and connection to the wider world. Did you hear, Annie said, passing the beans? The railroad's finally coming through. They broke ground last week. About time, Caleb said. Been talking about it for years. They're hiring, good wages. Annie looked at Noah. Might be worth a summer job before you go off to school. Noah's face lit up. Could I, Pa? If your marks stay good and you keep up with ranch chores. I will, I promise. Sarah tugged on Eleanor's sleeve. Mama, can I have more cornbread? Eleanor smiled, passed the plate, watched her daughter's face scrunch in concentration as she buttered the bread. Mama. The words still made her chest ache with gratitude. After supper, after the dishes were done and the children in bed, Eleanor and Caleb sat on the porch swing he'd built last summer. Do you ever think about that day at the station? Eleanor asked. Every day. Regret it. Only that I wasted time being afraid. He showed her something, the original forged letter from Noah, kept all these years. Our founding document. Eleanor took it, read the familiar words in Noah's careful handwriting, smiled. He saved us all. He did, but you're the one who stayed. Caleb pulled her close. You could have run, should have run, but you stayed and fought for a family that wasn't yours yet. It was always mine. Eleanor leaned against his shoulder. From the moment that boy looked at me with hope in his eyes, it was always mine. They sat in the gathering dark, listening to crickets, to the distant sound of cattle lowing, to the wind moving through the grass. And Eleanor thought about choices, about courage, about all the roads that had led her here. She wouldn't change a single step. 15 years later, 1893, Noah Hart stepped off the train at Cheyenne Station, 23 years old, fresh from the Colorado School of Mines, engineering degree in hand, engaged to Annie Cooper. The platform was crowded, families reuniting, business being conducted, the ordinary chaos of a growing town. He scanned the crowd, looking for his father. Instead, he saw his whole family, Caleb graying now but still strong, Eleanor 42 and radiant, Sarah 14 all grown up and teaching the younger students at the school, and beside them a boy he didn't recognize, maybe 8 years old, dark-haired and serious. Noah's throat tightened as he walked toward them. Who's this? This is Thomas, Eleanor said, resting her hand on the boy's shoulder. We took him in last year. His parents died of fever. He needed a home. Noah knelt, looked the boy in the eyes, saw the same hope he remembered feeling at that age, the same desperate need for family. Welcome to the Harts, Thomas. The boy's face lit up. That night at the ranch, Noah stood in his old room, looking out at the valley. Everything was the same. Everything was different. The ranch had doubled in size. The schoolhouse was now a proper building with 3 teachers. The town had grown, prospered, and the Hart family had expanded. Grown, become a refuge for the lost and broken. Eleanor found him there. You all right, just thinking, he turned to her. About that letter I wrote, how scared I was, how desperate. Best thing you ever did. You really think so? I know so. She crossed to him, took his hands. You gave your father a reason to live again. You gave me a family. You showed everyone in this valley that love is braver than fear. Noah smiled. I was just a kid who missed his ma. You were a boy who saved 3 lives with a forged letter. Eleanor pulled him into a hug. Don't ever forget that. 30 years later, 1908, the ranch sprawled across 3,000 acres now, 3 generations living on the property. Noah ran the operations, modern equipment, scientific breeding programs, everything he'd learned at school put to use. Sarah had become a doctor, the first female physician in the territory, married to a lawyer from Denver. 2 children. Thomas worked as Noah's right hand, married to one of Eleanor's former students. 4 children. And in the main house, Caleb and Eleanor sat on the porch, watching the sun set, surrounded by grandchildren playing in the yard. Caleb was 64 now, still healthy, still sharp, but slowing down, letting the younger generation take over. Eleanor was 62, hair more gray than auburn, hands gnarled with arthritis, but eyes still bright, still fierce. Tell us how you met Grandpa, one of Sarah's daughters called, running up to the porch. You've heard that story 100 times, Eleanor said, smiling. Tell it again. Caleb chuckled, pulled the child onto his lap. Your grandmother arrived in Wyoming with nothing but a carpet bag and more courage than anyone I had ever met. Because Uncle Noah forged the letter. That's right, he was very naughty. But it worked out. It did. Eleanor reached over, took Caleb's free hand. It worked out perfectly. The children ran off, chasing fireflies in the gathering dusk. Caleb and Eleanor sat in silence, comfortable, complete. I love you, he said quietly. I know. She squeezed his hand. I've known for 30 years. Best 30 years of my life. Mine too. They watched the stars come out, one by one, filling the vast Wyoming sky, and Eleanor thought about the girl she'd been, standing on that platform, terrified and desperate and so brave. She'd come west looking for safety, found danger instead, found scandal, found work and pain and fear. But she'd also found Caleb, found Noah, found herself. And she'd built something that would last long after she was gone, a legacy of courage, of choosing love over fear, of fighting for family. That was enough, more than enough. Eleanor Hart sat in her velvet armchair, 74 years old, dying of cancer, but at peace. Her granddaughter Margaret finished writing, set down her pen, looked at the old woman with tears in her eyes. And then what happened? Then we lived. Eleanor smiled. We ranched, we raised children and watched them raise theirs. We fought drought and disease and economic panics and small-minded people. We survived because we chose each other. Every day, not just once at a train station, but every morning after. The reporter asked if you regretted answering that ad. What did you really want to say? Eleanor was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts, her final words. I wanted to say that regret is for people who never learned the difference between safety and living. I came west looking for safety. I found danger, scandal, violence, fear, but I also found Caleb. I found Noah. I found myself. She paused. And I'd do it all again. Every hard choice, every fight, every moment of terror, because the alternative was staying small and safe and invisible. And I'd rather be legendary and scarred than forgotten and intact. She handed Margaret a box. Inside, the forged letter from Noah, Eleanor and Caleb's wedding bands, deed to the original ranch, her midwifery journal, photos of the family. This is for you when you're older. Why me? Because you're the only one who asked for the whole story. Most people just want the romantic parts, but the whole story includes the fear, the violence, the poverty, the desperation. That's the part that matters. Eleanor's breathing was slowing. Not how it started, but what we did with it. Margaret leaned forward. Grandmother, what was the most important moment? The letter, the wedding, defeating Clayton. Eleanor smiled. None of those. It was the morning after Noah's snake bite, when I realized I wasn't trying to survive anymore. I was trying to live, and there's a difference. Her eyes closed. Peaceful. Complete. Margaret noticed her grandmother had stopped breathing, still holding the forged letter, passed in her sleep, on the mantle a photograph, 1883, Caleb, Eleanor, Noah, Sarah, all smiling, all together. Inscription on the frame, the Hart family, Sweetwater Valley, chosen not given. Margaret opened her grandmother's journal, read the final entry, written just days before. August 14th, 1920. If someone asks what I learned in 42 years of marriage, tell them this: love isn't finding someone who completes you. It's finding someone who helps you become complete yourself. Caleb didn't save me. Noah didn't save me. I saved myself. They just gave me a reason to try. I came west on a forged letter, left behind everything I knew, faced scandal and servitude and a man who tried to own me. But I also found a boy who needed a mother, a man who needed to learn how to love again, a valley that needed a teacher, a family that needed to be built from broken pieces. And when people ask if I regret answering that matrimonial advertisement, if I'd do it all again knowing what it would cost, I tell them this: the train ticket to Cheyenne cost me $12. Everything that came after cost me blood and sweat and tears and pride. But it gave me a life worth living, children worth raising, a love worth fighting for. Some debts are worth paying. Some letters are worth answering. Some strangers are worth trusting. And some lies, like a boy forging his father's name because he was drowning and didn't know how else to ask for help, are the most honest things in the world. I'd pay it all again, every cent, every scar, every moment of terror, because I didn't just survive arriving at that station. I became who I was always meant to be. Margaret closed the journal, looked at her grandmother's peaceful face, at the letter still clutched in her hand, and she understood finally what Eleanor had been trying to teach her. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to live despite it. The sun set over San Francisco Bay, painting the sky orange and gold. Somewhere in Wyoming, on a ranch that stretched across 3,000 acres, Eleanor's great-grandchildren were sitting down to supper, telling stories, laughing, building their own futures on the foundation she'd laid. And on a dusty platform in Cheyenne, if you listen carefully on quiet evenings, you might still hear the echo of a woman's voice, steady, strong, unafraid, saying the word that changed everything. Yes,